Texas Code, Chapter 551. This is our workshop. The next item on our agenda is going to be public comments. Do we have anyone who signed up for public comments, Elizabeth or Rebecca? No. Then we'll just move right on into the board workshop portion of this particular meeting.
Madam President, members of the board, it is so good to see you all face-to-face again tonight. Sorry about that, I didn't have my microphone on. It's so good to see you all face-to-face again tonight. We are here and we're ready to talk a little bit about opening scenarios. I'm going to invite Dr. Golden and some of our team to come on up. We are talking through in this workshop, just a reminder for our public, this is the first meeting that we've had with a new format for our board meetings. This is a workshop format. This is where we discuss a topic in depth and we have back and forth discussion. So board members, please make sure you ask your questions along the way. This is about us getting good information back and forth from you as a board of trustees so that we can make great decisions for kids. And so tonight our team's going to be presenting scenarios 3 and 4 and our at-home learning and an in-depth view so that you can know and understand what our students are going to be experiencing. Dr. Golden, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, good evening. So again, our purpose this evening is to provide you with an update and discuss our system response, specifically scenarios 3 and 4, as well as at-home learning, give you some additional information and hopefully be able to answer some questions this evening. And so on our next slide, we wanted to start again. We started last time when we talked with you about our response planning. We started with what were the knowns and unknowns. And so a couple of the new updates from the Texas Education Agency. One is around attendance, and just wanted to confirm and talk about that attendance will be required this year in accordance with the Education Code. We'll be taking attendance face-to-face as we normally would for students that are coming to school in our scenarios, whether it's 1, 2, or 3, or 4. But our students that are at-home learners, we will also be required to take attendance. And so TEA has given us 3 options on attendance for our at-home learners. And so one will be, it might be through a synchronous time that's been scheduled with the teacher. The other might be work that's been turned in to the teacher. Or the other way is being able to track progress within the learning management system. And Deanna's going to talk more about that later in the presentation. But attendance matters and attendance counts. And we have this phase-in window that we'll talk a little bit more about that gives us time to make sure our attendance procedures are in good shape and we're ready to go. The other thing in terms of learning environments, of course, we know that we have an at-home learning option for our students as well as at-school options that we've been planning around. And so throughout the presentation, Deanna is going to be talking to you about the learning experience piece of it, as well as Mike Morgan's going to be talking about the operational pieces, specifically highlighting those in scenarios 3 and 4. I just mentioned the phase-in. A Texas Education Agency is giving us that window of opportunity to phase in scenarios, and so we'll be talking to you about what that means, specifically around a phase-in for the first 4 weeks. We could extend a phase-in to an 8-week window, but the last 4 weeks would be with board approval. And then the final piece, again, the prevention, mitigation, and response we'll be posting. We have been posting on our district's website. We are continuing to add to that information. And again, our Assistant Superintendent, Mike Morgan, is going to go into details around prevention, mitigation, and response planning specific to those scenarios 3 and scenarios 4. And so with that, just want to remind everyone, we have been planning for all 5 of these scenarios. Scenario 1 being face-to-face, which is, of course, our dream. That would be we're back. COVID is behind us. We've learned some lessons along the way, both instructionally with technology as well as health and safety. Scenario 2, we've been planning for that as well. We're returning face-to-face we're hand washing more frequently, so we have more of those safety protocols in place. Scenario 3, we've also been planning for, and scenario 3 is where our safety mitigation strategies increase. We're requiring masks in scenario 3. We're doing much more frequent cleaning of buildings and common spaces. We're reducing access to common spaces in that scenario 3. And then, of course, scenario 4 is where we're looking at hybrid schedules, and that's where we're actually looking at reducing number of students in secondary, for example, at school on given days, and you're going to get a lot of detail on that today, that particular one. And then, of course, scenario 5 is in the event that we would have to close a school, the whole school district, or close a school building based on the number of students or staff testing positive in that. And then the final is the at-home environment. We've been, of course, planning for that because we want exceptional learning no matter the environment. And we also know that we're going to have to probably live within numerous of these scenarios throughout the year based on the health situation that comes our way. And so we've been planning for all 5 of these and being prepared for that. And so tonight is an opportunity to really dig deeper into specifically scenario 3 and 4. We're actually going to start with scenario 4. And Deanna Lovesmith, our Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning, is going to start diving into what does that really look like for our students.
Trustees, I'll add real quickly as Deanna's coming up too. The reason that we're really focusing on 3 and 4 because of the current realities that we have with our health pandemic across the nation and in Bell County and in Belton ISD. So while we would like to be starting at 1 or 2, we're really focusing in on 3 or 4 because we feel like that those are the realistic areas for face-to-face instruction for our students at this time. So that's the why behind those 2 scenarios.
So scenario 4, if you'll turn to the next slide. Thank you. So scenario 4, elementary students attend school in person 4 days per week. Wednesdays, students engage in at-home learning activities provided by their teacher. For secondary students, they will attend school 2 days per week in person and be in at-home learning for 3 days. Students will attend school in one of 2 groups identified by last name. Also at the secondary level, campuses are implementing a modified block for the entire school year. Students continue to take the same number of classes, however, there are fewer classes on a single day. This will allow students to manage 5 rather than 8 classes per day and will reduce transitions in the hallways. Next slide. So let me tell you the story of a student. We'll call her Elizabeth. She's in 3rd grade. In scenario 4, and actually this will describe at-home learning for any scenario, but I'll talk about it starting here. And that could be your on your Wednesdays for scenario 4, you're an intermittent at home, or you're choosing at home. The learning still can look the same. So for Elizabeth, who's a 3rd grader, in scenario 4, she is home on Wednesdays. She is able to log into the Google Classroom account and see the unit be an author. You'll see that screenshot on the right. In this unit, there is a recording for her to watch instruction. You could see a picture of that at the bottom. There was a Zoom activity, or to participate in a discussion on a quote. When she submits her answer, she can see answers that her classmates have submitted and can provide them feedback. As Elizabeth is able to engage in this type of learning for all her subjects, for reading, writing, math, science, social studies, music, and PE. At the top left, you will see the seesaw icon. That is the learning management system for our pre-K through 2nd grade. We had students this summer in K through 5th grade utilize both of these platforms with this type of learning. So we know students are able to engage in this type of learning, to engage with their classroom teacher and also with their classmates. Next slide. So then let's talk about the story of a second student. I'll call him Kyle, and he's a sophomore student. In scenario 4, Kyle is also home on Wednesdays. He is also home Thursdays and Fridays because he is a part of Group 1. On Mondays and Tuesdays, he is attending school in person. Whether Kyle is at home or at school, he is using Schoology for his learning management system. In the middle, you will see a picture of Miss Martina's English 2 class. That's a real English 2 teacher in our system. Kyle is able to access resources he has been using in class for his English 2 period. Like Elizabeth, he has access to the same pre-recorded videos. It is also possible that his teacher has posted a scheduled time for him to access a Zoom to engage in live instruction with his teachers and classmates, both who are either at home or at school. One of the courses that Kyle might take is an automotive course, like a CTE class. On the right, you can see an example at the top of a choice board. Those are commonly used among our classes. In that choice board, Kyle was given the ability to choose how to demonstrate his knowledge of basic car maintenance. This activity is actually from our automotive class in the spring. He was then able to record at the bottom a video that would show his knowledge, demonstrate his knowledge. These activities allow students to demonstrate their knowledge and mastery of TEKS whether they are at home or at school. On the left, you see two icons for Schoology and Canvas. Schoology is the platform used for our 6th through 12th grade students. Canvas is only used by New Tech, and it is not a new learning management system for either of those populations. So over the past 2 weeks, our teachers have been engaged in professional learning centered around providing exceptional learning experiences for students that transcend the physical presence of where their students are. And that is a very new concept for our teachers, to really plan around whether students are with them or at home. Because we do not know the climate of our community or the future, and we know the fluidity of this environment, our teachers are robustly planning an asynchronous learning environment with the ability to adapt as students come in. So unlike some other models that are out there where students come in and only operate asynchronously, and it may or may not be the teacher for that course, our students will attend in person. They will follow their regular schedule with live interaction from teachers. But our students that are at home will follow that same schedule and are expected to follow it in real time to the greatest extent possible to really lean on those synchronous times. Do you have questions on that, or I'll keep going? I guess I should keep going. Yes, sir.
Tell me when I'm ready. Am I good? Okay. From the teacher standpoint, I'm trying to figure out, they're in the class, and I'll use the example we have here. They're in the classroom 5 days a week. 4 of those days, they will have students in the class with them. Is that correct?
That is correct. Secondary level,
Yes,
elementary,
yeah,
either one, absolutely,
Right, yeah.
absolutely,
So what we're
yes,
looking at right here,
absolutely.
so they've also, 2 days, every day of their week, they've got kids, except for Wednesday. So on Monday and Tuesday, they have a group of students and they're with them. And their Thursday, Friday kids are online. Are they interacting with their Thursday, Friday kids live interface? Because they've also got a live classroom going on. I'm just trying to figure out how they're going to juggle kids here and kids here.
Absolutely, that's a fantastic question. And the answer to that is yes, they may be. And they may be doing it simultaneously. And I worked personally is in conversations with high school teachers on Thursday and Friday to talk through that very thing. And so where originally everyone looked at, let's have a designated teacher that only served the fluidity of this, the allowance of all the elective classes, teachers came to the realization that, I can serve both kids. So I can have Google discussions at assigned, so I could use Schoology, I can use Google Meet, and I can have an assigned time that I want my at-home learners to log in, and I have my students live, and I may run discussions, and those discussions could be where the at-school learners are a group and the at-home learners are in breakout rooms, or I could mix the two.
Okay.
And teachers are wrapping their heads around this. I just will give a personal shout out right now for how incredible our teachers are in embracing a new way of everything. And so yes, that is possible for our secondary.
Okay.
So Dr. Les Smith, as far as the kids that are at home, is there going to be a set schedule, a time for them to log on so they can be in collaboration with their in-person peers? Or have you all talked about that, or what will that look like?
Yes, so when we're communicating is that at-home learners are expected to follow the same schedule. I use the word bell schedule. It's kind of odd because you're at home, but following that same schedule. However, our teachers are working out flexibility for when we know students will struggle with that defined time. So when you're talking about exceptional learning at the highest level, we know the importance of having synchronous time in the schedule. But I'll talk about a little bit later. Our plan requirement for the state is an asynchronous plan that the state does not require that synchronous time in there. But in Belton, we believe it's critical to exceptional learning.
And what tools, if any, do we have to help, from a parent standpoint, to remember to help their little learner to log in, or what days they should be on campus? Do we have things set in place to help with those reminders for parents, or some type of tool they can use?
So our parents, so that leads me to the next slide. Thank you for that segue. One, our principals are acutely aware of the need to really work with our teachers on communication. They've started to streamline locations for where things are held in Schoology, so there's consistency among courses. The Schoology is the home spot touchdown for secondary to see that agenda every day and what's posted in it. We also know that our parents are going to need support with digital tools, and so we have created a digital learning resources hotspot. When you click on that hotspot, we have access from everything from how to unbox your device in a video showing that, to tools to use for logging into Schoology, logging into learning management systems. Then we've further broken it down for what we know would be we've anticipated common tasks that would be asked in maybe in a Google Suite platform, and we've provided videos to support parents with that as well. So, yes, sir.
So the example that we have here is this young man in the automotive deal. So CTE's always been I've always been real proud of BISD and our CTE and what we do with our kids. So I want to ask two different scenarios. So the kids that are going to be in person, that are doing 2 days a week, I never have known how many hours a week of hands-on each class, like automotive or culinary or the building kids. How many hours a week do they have in class versus how many hours they have hands-on? Mm-hmm. And are they going to be able to keep that going? Are those kids going to get to come to school more often? And then what are the at-home kids going to do about the hands-on learning portion of those classes? You can't get certified as a plumber if you're not plumbing something.
Correct. So it depends on the level of the CTE course, and we have identified courses on the website for parents that show which ones will have some in-person requirements. All teachers, including our CTE, are being challenged to find as many ways to have students practice their skills without coming in person. However, especially for some of our most advanced courses, there will be in-person requirements, and the teachers will work with students on that so that they do come in for, just like you said, that practice, that face-to-face and practice. Now, like in that example, the student was able to demonstrate basic car maintenance by videoing his knowledge at home. It was all done at home and then sent to the teacher. But there will be, for instance, welding, where there's equipment that's required for certification, and then teachers will work with students on what the in-person requirements will be. And we've built a schedule for at-home learning that supports the flexibility of a student to be able to attend school on a day that they might need to. So that's why the synchronous will be available, but there will be times where students will need to prioritize coming in for that day. Absolutely. And now I believe next slide. I turn it over to operations.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to get to speak with y'all tonight. And I want to take a few areas of our operations and really try to get a little more in depth than we probably did at our first workshop and get into some of the hows that we're going to be looking at. So we are talking about scenario 4. We are talking about living in a world of enhanced safety precautions, and that's kind of the first slide I want to talk about. You know, in a normal world that we would all like to return to, we operate in what's been the normal for 100 years. We've had a certain way we clean classrooms, a certain way we clean schools. You know, you move into some additional cleaning measures at times of heavy flu season and things of that nature, but we fully anticipate if we're in scenario 3 or 4, and we're talking about 4 specifically now, we're living in a world of enhanced safety protocols. And I kind of have a few bullet points here, and I'm not going to read the bullet points to you. I'm going to kind of talk to you about what this will mean for a student, for a teacher, and for a staff member. So if we are in scenario 4, and we are living in enhanced safety protocols, first is we're talking about cleaning practices and cleaning schedules. And the easiest way to define this, I guess, or to categorize it is that we will have to take up additional cleaning and disinfecting for high priority areas, and do less cleaning and disinfecting to low priority areas. Meaning we know that some of the mitigators of this, of the slowing the spread of the COVID-19 and other infectious viruses, is that we're going to have to clean commonly touched surfaces much more frequently than we normally would in a normal cleaning schedule. So we've been meeting, we have a detailed plan for our custodians, whether in level 3 or level 4, and it outlines for them how many times a day we clean which areas, and we'll concentrate on the highest priority areas and the areas that would be most commonly touched by students. Another concern or another area where we've heard lots of feedback from our community and from our parents and from our staff is in the cafeteria and in our dining. And I'd like to, been very appreciative of our Director of School Nutrition, Rob Prasashnik, and his staff, and they've come up with some great plans for how we are pretty much going to be able to offer hands-free dining for those students that dine in our cafeterias. So from no cash point of sales to pass swipes for payment options to 6-foot disbursement in our cafeterias and dispersed dining areas to disposable containers that do not have to be taken back or reused from lunch to lunch. There's a lot of things that plans that they put in place along with our campus principals that we feel like is going to give us the safest environment at that time whenever students cannot wear a mask because they're eating their lunch. So that was a big concern, and I feel like that we have a solid plan. I was on 3 or 4 different campuses last week and kind of walking through the cafeteria with the principals, and they've done some great work in figuring out how we're going to make this happen. Obviously, a huge thing when we talked about enhanced safety precautions is hand washing and the use of hand sanitizer. We feel like that this is going to be a great mitigator and something that is going to be a group and team effort. And so we do realize that we want to saturate our students with messaging about hand washing and hand sanitizer. And by messaging, we mean not only the appropriate and proper way to do so, but also reminders and built-in times throughout the day when the students will need to make this happen. We want to make sure that we have the supplies we need to provide the students an opportunity to wash their hands. We're adding portable hand washing stations to every campus and also adding portable hand sanitizer stations to every campus. And we want to follow that up with hygiene, safety lessons, and messaging. So we want to, like I said, saturate our students with messaging and reminders about hand washing and hand sanitizing. Our health services staff have put together some really good videos to help students see the proper way to do this. And then we've also got we'll use all tools at our disposal from signage in the schools, from messages from classroom teachers, and use of social media to make sure we promote these hygiene, safety, and hygiene messaging. And then the final thing is we need to make sure we use our tools that can help mitigate the spread as much as possible, from PPE and additional safety equipment. We've tried to be very responsive, but we've also tried to make things that we know and the science and the health authorities are telling us that can actually slow the spread. Looking at safety design, I thought this was an important topic. Next slide, please. It's safety design because there have been some consistent messaging from all health agencies since this outbreak started back in March. And although each campus is different, so one of the things that we've had to work through and we've been working with our staff through is that we really don't have two campuses that are exactly the same. The cafeterias are different, the classrooms are different, and in a lot of cases the furniture's different, the class sizes could be different, the capacities are different, and we know that we've had to build through some individual safety design at each one of our campuses. But there has been consistent messaging from all health agencies, and these are the considerations that we must use if we're in scenario 4 to use as best prevention and mitigation strategies. We know that face coverings are going to be essential. We're working through and we do have, there are going to be some things to consider with that, and we're working on a whole campaign to make sure everyone understands exactly the expectations on face coverings. But under current guidance from our health agencies and from our governor, that the expectation in scenario 4 would be that staff and students would wear face coverings to the greatest extent possible, and all who can would wear face coverings. We do know that social distancing helps. We do know that social distancing is not always going to be possible. Sometimes in a classroom, sometimes in different avenues or different areas throughout the day, we know that we're going to have to use other mitigators other than 6-foot distancing. But we also know that there are going to be times during the day when we absolutely can maintain 6-foot spacing. And we're going to make sure that those are the opportunities we need to seek. And we need to seek those opportunities also to give the students a break from wearing their mask. One of the questions we keep hearing over and over again is, they can't wear their mask for 8 hours. And I agree with that. I don't want to wear a mask for 8 hours. So we have to be creative in our safety design to build in times when we can spread these kids out and let them get out of their mask for a while. But we do know there's going to be times that that's not going to be a possibility. They're going to be within 6 feet of each other, and we've got to have exceptional learning. And so it is going to take some training. I'm a firm believer that kids want to be in school, and they want to be there, and that they will fall in line and follow the best practices, and I think they're going to encourage each other to do the same. I've always believed, and I've always seen it firsthand, kids will rise to the expectations, and I think kids want to be here. But we've got to be smart as adults, and we've got to build schedules in and give these kids a break where they're not in their masks for hours and hours and hours. I think that's kind of the vision that's out there. But we do know that if we're inside of 6 feet, that the best medical agencies, the best medical advice we have is that students would need to wear masks in those situations. We know that in a level 4 or scenario 4, we need to avoid large gatherings. It wouldn't be realistic for pep rallies to look like they've always looked. It wouldn't look as the same for freshman focus or meet the teacher, or those types of things will not look like they look in a traditional school year in a scenario 4 opening. But we do know that there is ways to celebrate kids and do so where it may not be traditional, it may not look the same as it always has. Graduation, for instance, was a very big success, I felt like, and we did avoid large gathering. We didn't put 8,000 people together at one time and have a traditional ceremony. So we know that avoiding large gatherings is a way to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. And then we have to follow safety guidelines and protocols. I talked about hand washing, talked about how to manage face coverings a little bit, how to disperse groups, taking TEA and UIL guidance and protocols in. And then we've had to look at things like our clinics. How do we handle our campus clinics? How do we handle our custodial practices? How do we handle our cafeteria practices? All of those types of things. As we've done safety design, we've kind of had to make it where it's particular to each campus and their set of circumstances that we're going to be dealing with in an opening.
Mike, let me jump in real quick on this one. The board, one of the things that I want to make sure that we reiterate is we're all wearing masks tonight and doing our best to socially distance and be 6 feet apart. It's a pain. We all know it. But one of the reasons that we are doing it tonight is so that we can be face-to-face to have a meeting. And so when Mike talks about the education and the support, we're really going to try and talk to people about, if you want to be face-to-face, the best thing that we can do is employ all of these measures so that we can keep you face-to-face. We know what we've seen across the nation with schools that have opened that haven't been able to keep people at a distance or in masks, and they've had to shut down. We want to avoid all of that. So when he's talking about these things, these are safety measures that we're taking very seriously. It's an inconvenience for all of us, and I want to reiterate that. I have a hard time wearing a mask. It drives me crazy. But I do know this. I want to see you all face-to-face, and I want to see our kids face-to-face in the buildings. And so the more we can have a joint ownership of some of these things, we feel like the better off we'll be in making sure that we can get everybody back face-to-face and as normal as possible in the near future.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Next screen, please. So let's talk briefly about screening. Screening is a topic, and we feel like that we've consulted with health authorities. We've looked at other districts' plans and models, and we feel good about where we're at with screening. And I'm going to jump to the second bullet point on this, is we're going to do everything we can to message and try to build a sense of collective accountability and trust. Because one thing, when we met with our parent groups and when we met with our teacher groups, one thing we heard consistently when it comes to screening is people aren't going to tell the truth, right? So, I mean, there's no way to get around that statement, whether we do it on a Google form, whether we do it on an app, whether we do it in face-to-face when they get on the bus or when they come. We're going to have to trust people that people will do the right thing because we all want to be here, and we're not trying to hide things that might keep the whole school from being able to meet face-to-face. I mean, so what we're going to encourage is a combination of collective accountability and trust. We are going to, just like we expect our staff, and myself included, we expect our staff to get up in the morning and do a daily self-screen and ask themselves those questions that they need to ask, and we're going to make sure our parents have those tools, and we're going to expect our parents to do the same. We're going to expect our parents to have that conversation with their kids. Are you feeling okay? Is anything going on? Are you having any of these types of symptoms? And we're going to expect and ask our parents to have those discussions with their kids. Meanwhile, when students arrive at school, the first class period of the day that has contact with that student, we're going to have a similar conversation with them. And we've already created some age-appropriate messaging and discussion. So from pre-K all the way up to juniors and seniors in high school, we're going to have that discussion with them. How are you feeling? Is there anything going on? Is there anything we need to know about? That we can only make this work is if you're having any of these symptoms or having any of these conditions, or you've been around anyone who have, we have to take the appropriate protocols and make it work. So I'm not going to get up here and tell you we've got the perfect screening tool, and at 6:45 every morning, everyone's going to hit submit, and we're going to have a tally of all 8,000 in-person students, and we're going to know. The districts we've talked to, we don't know that there's a way to do that. So what we're going to do is build it around conversations with parents, conversations with students, and we're going to have very tight protocols in place that and teachers know their kids. Teachers can look in a kid's eye a lot of times and know if they're not feeling well as well. So, but we're going to try to build that trust with our students, and we will daily screen. Just like we've had fantastic success with our extracurricular programs this summer. They have an online or an in-person, but they've screened and it's worked, and we've had very few incidents, and we haven't had a single case of spread through our programs this summer. Now, we're bringing a lot more kids back to school, but we plan on that parents will screen every day, and we're going to screen every day, and we're going to do that through collective accountability and trust and messaging, and that we're all in this together. And it's not going to work if we come to school or come to work and we're sick, because then we're going to expose others, and so we're going to do a really good job trying to message that out and build that relationship with our kids. And then temp checks, we are next slide. We are going to follow the recommendations of the CDC, TEA, and American Academy of Pediatrics. We are going to do daily temperature checks on our youngest learners, on our Belton Early Childhood School learners. We do know that we have some special student populations that are not able to verbalize how they're feeling or may not be able to let us know if they're not feeling well, so we will do daily temperature checks of those populations. And then we have hundreds and hundreds of digital thermometers that will be available if a kid's not feeling well. We've got protocols with the nurse, and we'll have temperature checks available for other student populations, but we do not, after walking it through with health officials, walking it through with our campus administrators, and consulting with other districts, we do not feel that a one-on-one temperature check for every student that comes to school every day is going to be appropriate at this time. And so, I'm going to turn it over. I would take questions now or at the end, Dr. Smith. Take questions now? Yes, sir. I think, and the final product hasn't come out yet, but I will kudos to Bell County Health Authority for kind of working through this with us. But there's going to be a Bell County number that when you hit that threshold, then the expectation would be the class or the campus leaves for a period of contact tracing, deep cleaning, and just to get everyone started. So there's going to be a Bell County expectation that all school districts would meet in that. It'll be a percentage-based number.
I've heard
So
that one.
once you hit a certain percentage, then that campus would be closed for a certain number of days.
And then the other one is like with the CTE kids and the kids that are over at New Tech, you know, we bus a lot. We're going to still keep that going, right? We're
Yeah.
still going to be moving those kids
We
back
are,
and
and we
forth.
actually have a meeting set up to determine how contact tracing will respond to that. But yes, there certainly will still run the same schedules, the same shuttles that we always have between New Tech and Belton High.
Okay, thank you.
Real quick to add on to Ty's question there about the percentage. So we're not talking about a high percentage in initial indications from Bell County Public Health, and I don't believe that they've settled on a final one. But last I heard, they were talking 2 or 3%. So again, it goes back to the mitigation, the prevention and mitigation strategies like wearing masks, staying as far apart as we can, cleaning as much as we can will help us keep kids in school if that's the case. So that's one of the things that we got to keep stressing to everyone, because some of those things might be out of our hands, and we have to make sure that we are doing our part to try and keep kids in class if that's the case.
And so if we have to close a campus and those kids have to revert to online learning, are those teachers then prepared to flip a switch and prepared to teach those kiddos online? And do we have things in place for that?
Yeah.
I'll defer that to others, but yes, we know that at any time, all campuses could be closed with the governor's order, a federal directive, a TEA directive. So we absolutely know that we could be at full face-to-face, or we could be every kid learning at home like we were in the spring. So yes, there will be plans in place for that.
So I'll add on to that real quickly. Deanna mentioned this earlier, and it went kind of understated, but they've done a ton of work with our teachers in these last couple of weeks to really utilize these learning management systems and technology tools that we provided. The whole goal in all of this is to, let's say Matt Smith is a student in the school district and he ends up being quarantined for 14 days for some reason. We don't want his education to stop. We want him to be able to continue learning. The same can be applied if it's a classroom that's shut down or a campus that's shut down or a district that's shut down. We are doing our best to make sure our teachers in our system is as agile as possible so that student learning continues no matter what the scenario. It is a really tall task, but I'm really proud of the efforts that have been going on for working with our teachers, but also for the systems that Mike's been talking about.
Yeah, and so like what I heard when Dr. Lovesmith was talking was the same tools that the students are going to be using that are remote, like the in-class students are going to be using that same tool, right? And so they'll all have a comfort level in using that, and really the change is just, where's your chair? My chair's at school, or my chair's at home, right? I mean, in theory.
In theory is a good way to put it.
Yeah.
We're working on that. And the reason I say
Right.
it like that is just remember that you all had supported us in ordering new devices so that our elementary students could get devices. This is going to be a whole new ball game for some elementary students when we talk about things like this, like being used to Google Classroom and getting in that habit. But our goal is to get in that habit so they're using these tools all the time, so that when and if we do have these scenarios where they're interrupted in their physical location of their learning, that they actually continue the learning at home.
So I just want to reiterate, because I said something, and I, like Matt said, I think it did go understated. And so our teachers are committed to providing exceptional learning experiences for students that transcend the physical presence of being with each other. And so our staff, just like you asked, Suzanne, is that yes, our teachers are ready to flip a switch. They are going to plan for an exceptional learning that's asynchronous for at home. Our elementary teachers are going to be developing schedules with the reality that we could learn on a Thursday that our school's closed or a classroom is closed on Friday or Monday. And so the need to be able to communicate to a parent, I have a child that's going to attend school at person, but I have to know what will happen with my child's learning should his classroom be closed. And so yes, we are preparing for that fluidity. Yes, ma'am.
Yep. So I just want to be clear that what we're thinking right now, if things don't change or get a lot better in regard to our numbers in Bell County, right now we're considering on the secondary level this group 1 and group 2 scenario where you come 2 days a week. And that's only on secondary, but for elementary, they would be 5 days a week.
For elementary, it's 4 days a week.
Okay.
With Wednesdays at home.
Okay. Got it.
Absolutely.
Just one more. So Mike, you had said about face coverings, all who could wear them would be expected to wear them, right? So is that like pre-K through 12? Like, how do we define all who can wear them?
Yes, the standard expectation would be that all students who wear them. We do realize that there's going to be some that either for developmental purposes or for medical reasons can't, and then we would try to find alternates for that, whether it be some combination of additional distancing, additional spacing, whether in some cases a face covering or a face shield might be more appropriate than a cloth face covering or a mask. So we're going to, those instances where we have students that cannot, then we're going to have to work through kind of like we would any kind of other individualized instructional plan, and we've got to figure out a way for that student to still meet their needs, but not expose them or others to maybe unnecessary risks.
Thank you.
I probably need to recap real quick in a microphone because Mr. Morgan wasn't in a microphone, and I know we have some people watching that, so I'm going to do my best. On that idea of who wears face masks, we are going to work, or face coverings, excuse me, we are going to work with the student to meet their needs. We know that there are some students for health-related reasons or for developmental-related reasons are going to struggle with that. Our goal, just like it is to tie your shoes, is we try and work it in to make sure that people get used to wearing a face mask or face covering along the way. Where they can't, we're going to look for alternatives with them. Mike, I hope I said that okay.
Can I ask about Wednesdays? If I'm a working parent that can't not work on Wednesdays, and I have an elementary school student, so are we working with our community daycares to possibly, are they going to be offering support for the kids if the kids have to go to a daycare on that day? Or what are we doing as a district to support those parents that can't be home on a Wednesday?
So I'm going to look at Mike Morgan. He's been working with our after-school childcare systems to see what they will be able to provide so we can communicate that to parents. Do you need to add to that?
We do have two groups that we work with that actually provide childcare at school throughout the year. So those are the two groups I've been talking to. I think there would also probably need to be a coordinated effort with some of the daycare groups in town and just let them know what the expectation would be. And also that this would be basically for during this transition period that Dr. Golden talked about. So we're talking about a 3 to 4 week period tops right now. So that would hopefully that would help. But we've discussed several different options. And like I say, I've met with the representatives from the YMCA group that services before and after school care for our Belton schools. And in fact, just when this meeting started, I got a text from the person in the city of Temple that operates the zone for our Temple side schools. So we're looking at what those programs would be able to offer for a Wednesday closure, if they could offer, and what that would look like. But we also have a responsibility to reach out to others and let them know once we settle on a plan and decide how we're going to open school. If that's the case, then we would need to reach out and make sure they knew that there would be an additional need in the community that may not be there otherwise.
On our numbers that came back for our commitment forms, was it any different percentage-wise from what they were before?
I think, is someone addressing that? Is that gonna be in the superintendent's report?
We'll have it in the
That-
superintendent's
yeah.
report tonight.
I don't wanna misspeak on that. Yes. Did you have a question? Oh, okay. Yes, sir.
We have a
Going back
couple more
to,
questions.
athletics,
Yes.
let's just say we get to that 2 or 3% on Belton High School campus or Lake Belton High School campus, and none of those kids are on the volleyball team, or none of the 2 or 3% is on the football team. Have y'all talked about that scenario? Do they have to shut those two things down for 10 days, forfeit the games? What is going to happen if that happens?
I believe there's been two different conversations at the district executive committee level about that same thing, correct? And ultimately, I think it will probably, if it boils down to a school decision, I think that you would have to do your contact tracing and see where those contacts lie. If it becomes a Belton County Health Authority issue, then we may be bound by whatever they say we have to do. They could easily say if a campus is closed down, it's up to the school district. They could easily say if a campus is closed down, there's no extracurricular activities during that time as well.
Right now, for Belton's 12-6A district, we put the bye week at the end of the year to be able to move games in case that school closure shuts down. We also can go to the 5-day period like they have in Houston for hurricanes and schedule games every 5 days, which wouldn't be a traditional Friday, but we could get the games in. The last thing we'd want to do is a forfeiture. Volleyball-wise, they can move the games to Saturday, so we have a lot of flexibility there. Same thing with Lake Belton on moving the games to Friday to have some flexibility there. And we can always shift games around as school closures happen. And we, as a DC, we have protocols in place on moving those games, but that's why we moved the bye week to the week 11, the last game of the year, so we can move all the games we had to as a school closure happens.
And I think Mike's point is a really important one that he brought up just a minute ago. If we're closed by another authority, like Bell County Public Health says we have to close, we may have to follow exactly what they say, and that may include not participating in athletic events.
I do want to add a clarification in scenario 4, just because I do think it's important. We are dividing for our secondary students into groups 1 and 2. However, for students that are served in an FA, Life Skills, or Delta program, where our highest needs, we will offer the opportunity for those students to come in with both groups, so they would be attending 4 days a week. Just want to clarify that as
Okay, before we move on, I believe Mr. Alcozer had a question.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions.
And then I have a couple of questions as well. Go ahead.
Janet, you asked a question earlier. I think it was I wanted to ask the same question, and Dr. Lovesmith answered it. What did you ask earlier? About Friday, you had the attendance.
I'm really trying
Yeah,
to.
Deanna, you
Daniel,
just
was it-
answered it a moment ago. Yes, yes.
You're asking if students come in groups 1 and 2 and with secondary only, and then she asked would elementary students come in 5 days a week, and I clarified no, that for scenario 4 they would come in 4.
Okay, all right. That was one question. The other question was, maybe you can answer it, maybe Coach Morgan can answer it. What we're doing both in design and implementation, of course, some of the things we're doing now, we're just doing it with staff, but when school starts on September the 8th, how much of what we're doing comes from state mandates and or the county, or is it a BISD creature, or something that we've created in terms of policy and implementation of that policy?
So I can speak on behalf of the instructional piece, and then I can let Mike speak on behalf of the operations. Instructionally, our government state told us to open the door for an at-home learning option. That has never before been an option where we provided the same instruction and continuity time for someone who is at home as at school. So that is completely new. That being said, and talking in our conversations with teachers, I don't know where this road will take us, if this is only a response to COVID or if this will open, in fact, some long-term ramifications for how we might do school differently in the future. And we don't know that. And so what we're doing right now is embracing that this is what we were asked to do, and we're going to do it really well and do it to the best of our ability.
The other thing that I'll add on to that manual is so the state has given us some guidance on things. For example, we've talked about a 4-week transition time, and I'm going to go into a little more depth about that when we wrap up. But this scenario 4 that we're talking about, this hybrid type scenario, we don't want to live in this scenario for a long time. We actually want to get people here, get things moving, and hopefully loosen restrictions if we have to open in scenario 4. But the state has provided us some guidance and some options regarding hybrid schedules. There are districts around the state that have opened in hybrid and will continue to open in a hybrid. So we are taking some of that guidance and using that. Again, this is one of our scenarios and we have not landed on it yet, but it is guidance that we've been using from the state in order to make these things.
This 2-day-a-week thing, though, is this something common among other Bell County schools, or?
I think other schools are doing it
Okay.
across the state. We've seen some others that are doing it. Every school district, what I would say right now is designing for what they believe is best for their students. And for us, this is what we felt like could open with less number of students to start. Were there some, I believe, I heard you say.
I have actually 3 things, but I want us to go ahead and move toward a close for this particular workshop. I'll ask them at the end, so if y'all have something further you want to present, let's go ahead and move toward that.
Well, good evening, everyone. Glad to be here tonight. In technology in scenario 4, we are planning for devices pre-K through 12th grade. We have new devices for 3rd through 12th grade. We've received devices for Belton High School, Lake Belton High School, and Belton Middle School, and those will be distributed. When they are distributed, we will be collecting the devices that they had the previous year. For South Belton Middle School, North Belton Middle School, Lake Belton Middle School, and elementary 3rd through 5th grade, we've ordered 5,300 devices, and we're hoping to receive those devices soon. If the devices are not received, we are planning to continue the usage of iPads at North Belton, South Belton, and Lake Belton Middle School, and then provide existing technology to our elementary individuals, one device per family for at-home learners. We do have existing Chromebooks on elementary campuses. Those devices will be redistributed to 2nd grade. And then for pre-K through 1st grade, we would redistribute the iPads for those grade levels, pre-K through 1st grade. We do have new fiber networks at all of our campuses. Hotspot, we have ordered 500 hotspots through the TEA bulk order program. And that was done through y'all's resolution that y'all did back in March for the superintendent to approve those. And that was at a discounted rate of about $55,000. We do have affordable internet options we've been collecting, and we plan to provide those to parents that have internet needs. And then Mike Morgan has kind of been spearheading sponsorship opportunities, and he is currently working with organizations to create sponsorships from those individuals. Next slide. With staff roles and responsibility, with at-school learning, teachers will be assigned to at-school learning. We'll also teach students requiring short-term learning at home due to illnesses, quarantine, or temporary school closure. With the at-home learning, elementary teachers will be assigned to at-home learning. We're trying hard to assign at-home learners to teachers from their home campus, but there may be pockets of student learners that are instructed by teachers that are not at their assigned campus. Secondary teachers would teach class periods of at-school learning and then class periods of at-home learning. Teachers would be available during designated times to provide additional support to students by answering questions, providing feedback. To enhance the learning experience, we'd also involve interventionists, librarians, instructional aides to provide support as applicable. We do expect certified teachers working in other capacities may need to be needed at times to provide at-school instruction or assist with at-home learning or provide small group instruction. We also anticipate the need for paraprofessional staff, including office staff, educational aides, to provide support as well, kind of help us track attendance. You heard a little bit about attendance earlier and the complexities around that. Help us track attendance, read to students, and maybe do some small group learning under the direction of a teacher. Substitutes, will obviously be available for face-to-face learning. And we are working on providing additional substitutes on a daily basis to campuses as well. Online training for substitutes, or online training for staff. We are providing training regarding COVID to all of our staff members. We're doing that through our Safe Schools program, and we're able to track the completion of staff that complete that training, and we're expecting all training to be completed soon. We are offering online orientation for substitutes to help us to onboard them faster and get them to the classrooms faster as well. And the number of substitutes, and y'all have heard me say this before, we're working hard to increase our number of substitutes available within the district so we can have more support staff. Next slide. So we've talked previously about the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. This is an act that would expire December 31st under current regulations. It does provide leave for those individuals who test positive to COVID, who are quarantined as a result of COVID, and who have kids whose daycare or schools have closed for them to be able to watch. And again, that leave would end December the 31st. After that leave, it's a one-time usage with that Families First Coronavirus Act. So once you utilize that leave, that one time, if you got quarantined again, then we'd follow our local leave policies through DEC and DECA local, which would be your state leave, local personal leave, and all your personal leave. And then, of course, we're working with staff on ADA accommodations, working through medical assessments and needs that they may have, and providing those accommodations on a case-by-case basis. Next slide. So we are asking staff, and Mike had touched on this a little bit ago, we are asking staff to do some daily self-screening. We have rolled out a questionnaire where they respond daily and answer a questionnaire about whether they have experienced symptoms or not. And if they've experienced symptoms, we're asking them to report those immediately so we can take appropriate actions.
So I have a question right there.
You bet.
So what happens if they self-report that they're fine, and then it's found out later on that they in fact are positive for COVID-19? As a district, what are we doing, if anything?
Yeah, so we're hoping they provide the information to us accurately, and not just trying to say, hey, I'm not experiencing any symptoms so they can come to work. But in the event that does happen, we'll immediately quarantine, we'll remove that individual from the classroom environment or from the work environment, and isolate them, and then establish a quarantine for that individual that tests positive. And then we contact custodial. They'll come in and clean the area immediately, and then we'll have to do some contact tracing surrounding that as well.
What type of consequences, if any, would be tied to that? Like if they said that, yes.
Yeah,
if they,
so I think we'd have a pretty good conversation with them in human resources, asking them to be honest with this, because it does affect individuals, right, that are around them, and it could potentially quarantine a lot more individuals that need to be than could have been. It could have been prevented. So we would definitely have conversations with them about that.
Absolutely. Just want to make sure we not only keep our staff safe, but our kiddos safe as well. So.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate you asking that question, because that's one of the trickiest things that we are working with in all of this. Mike mentioned it earlier, but there's a reliance that we have to have on everyone to be doing their part, and that means being honest and telling the truth, even when you're feeling symptoms that normally you would have ignored in the past. And I think that's a really big deal that we have to keep working on.
Mike also touched on before protective measures of individuals while at work. We are asking for people to wear the face mask. When you think about being in close contact with somebody and potentially being quarantined, that face mask may help the decision to whether or not to quarantine. If they're wearing that mask, that may prevent them from being quarantined. So that face mask is hugely important to stop the spread and to protect our staff and students. Face shields will also be provided for instructional purposes or for staff who have difficulties wearing a cloth face covering. Use of phone systems, we're asking that we do that instead of meet as much as possible. And we do have some maximum meeting limits of 10 individuals per meeting at maximum. But again, we're really trying to reduce that and trying to use the phone systems to communicate and limit those face-to-face meetings. We are asking staff to help us with cleaning and disinfecting frequently touched items, objects and surfaces, limiting visitors to the building, washing hands frequently, using hand sanitizers, and again, staying home if you're sick. covering the mouth and nose with the tissue when coughing or sneezing, and avoiding touching eyes and mouth. And that's all the guidance from CDC and TEA that we're strongly encouraging staff to follow, and we keep communicating that information as well. Employee assistance program. So we know that this year is going to be a struggle for some of our staff members, and so we have been working hard to communicate our employee assistance program, and it's part of the training information of COVID-19 that we're asking staff to complete through our Safe Schools program as well. We know that may experience depression, grief, may concerns about emotional well-being, stress, and anxiety, and so we're trying to communicate as much as possible our employee assistance program that will put them in touch with licensed individuals that will be able to seek information from them and to provide assistance to them. And then the response to COVID. So, we've shared previously, we do have a response to COVID and when to quarantine, what to do if somebody tests positive, what to do if somebody has been in close contact with the virus, and what to do if somebody has symptoms with the virus. Next slide. I think I'm turning it back over to Deanna.
Madam President, members of the board, we've gone a little longer than anticipated on scenario 4, so we're going to hold off on going into anything in scenario 3 at this point, because we're going to be wrapping up this workshop here shortly and opening up our regular meeting. A couple of things to point out real quickly on this. First of all, scenario 3 or 4, we have not made a decision how we are opening face-to-face on September the 8th yet. And here's the reason why. As of today, the rolling 7-day average of positive cases in Bell County is the exact same as it was on July the 1st. The data that we are following, and we are working to use Bell County public health data, is what should guide us in some of these things, along with recommendations from local health authorities, along with guidance from TEA, and we want our students to be face-to-face. The longer that we can hold off to make that decision gives us a better chance, we hope, to actually open face-to-face 5 days a week, which would be scenario 3. Right now, Janet mentioned a little bit earlier, if you were to ask me to open school today, what would I recommend as the superintendent? I would recommend that we actually open in scenario 4, the hybrid, because it keeps students safer and staff safer by limiting the number of students that we have in secondary buildings at one time. That is the big difference between those two scenarios. I can tell you I don't take that decision lightly, and I haven't made that decision yet, but I want our public and our board to know I understand the implications that this has on families. I understand the implications that this has on everyone around us. But I also know this. If we want our kids to be able to stay in school, we have to be as thoughtful as we possibly can about the way we open school so that they can stay in the buildings and participate in some of those events like we saw on Friday at Lake Belton High School, where we saw kids in a volleyball game on the court. So that is the big challenge that we have right now. No, I want to be really deliberate. Not every district is talking about a hybrid scenario, but I didn't feel it was acceptable for us not to explore a hybrid scenario for the safety of our kids. It's one of those things that I want to make sure that we have turned over every stone if we want our kids to be here and safe, and we want our families to make sure that we are doing everything possible to get them here. So that is why we're heavily focusing on scenario 4 and scenario 3 at this time. One other thing that wasn't, I think, mentioned earlier is when the question was asked about the elementary day on Wednesday, what happens when students aren't in school on that Wednesday? For both the elementary and the secondary level, we feel like we need to be able to very thoroughly clean each and every building to make sure we're addressing what Mike said, covering all those hard surfaces and cleaning those on a very regular basis. So Wednesday, if we opened in a hybrid scenario, would be a deep cleaning day at every school in our district, and we would also do that again on the weekends. The hope would be that we would do the spot cleaning on Thursdays and Fridays, but on Wednesdays and on the weekends, we would have those deep cleanings, and again, spot cleaning again on Monday and Tuesday. The other thing that we heard loud and clear from our teachers was that they felt like they needed to have professional time to plan well. And so that hybrid scenario allows teachers those Wednesdays to plan well, because they are bearing the brunt of a lot of this. As Deanna mentioned, they're the ones that are having to figure out how to be so flexible that you have a kid in face-to-face one day and then remote the next day, and we're still doing everything we can to meet their learning needs. And that is a tall task. And so that is the reasons behind why we're exploring those scenarios: safety of our students, making sure that our teachers have the adequate planning time. And the only other district that I know in Bell County that is actively exploring that is Salado ISD at the secondary level. Last thing I want to clarify real quickly is that does not mean, if we do open in scenario 4, that does not mean that we want to live in that for the remainder of the year. The goal would be to phase that in for the first 4 weeks, keep everybody safe, get all of our systems in place, make sure that everybody is taking it seriously, make sure that we have kids there, teachers there, and everybody feels good about what we're doing, and then back down to scenario 3 where everybody's 5 days a week on that. So I want to be really clear with our public, with our community. We have not made that decision yet, but we don't want to live in that hybrid scenario for the whole year. What we are doing is planning to make sure that our kids and our staff are well taken care of.
Dr. Smith, appreciate all of that. Certainly, we want to make sure that our kiddos are safe, but at the same time, we also want to make sure that our parents have the tools that they need, and what they need is information. They're going to need to know as quickly as we are able to give it to them what we're thinking as far as which scenario we're going to open in. Because if we open in a hybrid situation and their kiddos are out of school on Wednesday, they're going to have to do those preparatory things to ensure that they have coverage for their children on that 1 day a week. So the sooner we can make that decision, the better it's going to be for our parents.
Absolutely.
Board, do you all have any other discussion for this particular workshop? Mr. Fleur?
So on that point, right, I mean, I think the state has said we have, like, the shortest time period we could possibly make that decision is within 2 weeks, right? And so, like, the worst case scenario would be basically the 25th, right, is when a decision would be made. I don't know, right? I mean, I echo everything you just said. There's a lot of preparations for potentially a lot of people to get services that maybe don't have the capacity. And, you know, are we putting kids potentially in a scenario on Wednesdays that's worse than being at school? I don't know, right? But I appreciate what we're doing.
Yeah,
right?
that's the tough question.
Yeah, I get it.
And the timing of it is critical. I think I told you all I spent Thursday and Friday last week gathering data, talking to doctors in the local area, gathering feedback, and we are hoping to make that decision and announcement this week. But again, one of the challenges we have with that is our rate, our average 7-day rate is the same as it was July 1st today. And so I was hoping that we were going to be going on a downward trend more than we are right now, but that's not the current case. But we do understand the need for parents to know, and it's our intention to make that announcement this week.
Thank you.
But one other,
Mr. Alcazar.
Matt, on the flip side of that, we could open up under a 3 and may have to go to a 4 from 1 week to the next. So it seems to me that parents should prepare for that anyway, because there's no guarantee you're going to stay under either scenario.
I think that's a good point, Manuel, and one of the things that we wanted to do with these scenarios is to make sure our community was well educated in realizing that the last thing we want to do is go all virtual again like we had in the spring. So it might be that if we're end up in a scenario 3 and we have to tighten up on some things, I think going 2 days a week would be more palatable to some families than not going any days a week face-to-face. So we are doing our best to make sure we're educating everyone to be flexible throughout the year. But again, we understand the implications on families. I'm feeling it in my own house right now. I totally understand it. And it's one of those things that we're going to get that decision made soon.
I'm sorry, I just want to clarify something that Manuel just said, right? So I thought that the hybrid scenario was only a legitimate only a TEA approved option in the first 4 weeks, and then potentially in a second 4 weeks if we voted to extend that. Is that correct?
So the hybrid scenario can be available to high school level students anytime during the year, according to a waiver that we are going to be filing and talking about a little bit later tonight.
Right.
But our goal would not be to continue that hybrid scenario. Our goal would be to be tight when we started and being able to loosen up. If we had to go to a hybrid later in the year, we would be able to with the waiver that you're going to consider tonight for high school only.
For high school only, right? So,
Correct.
so if we opened it a 3, right, in the scenario that Manuel said, we actually, like, do we have the option to fall back to a 4 for the little guys, the elementary school, or no?
Yes, we could
We do,
ask,
okay.
yeah, for an additional 4 weeks with board approval, we would be able to have
Okay.
that transition time.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, does the board have any other questions? I can't see you, so just tell me. Okay, if no further business for this particular workshop, it is 6:10. We will adjourn in just a second, and we'll come back at 6:15 for our regular board meeting. We are adjourned.